So next, I'd like to introduce our final panelists to speak tonight before everybody joins on screen. SirRoan Smiley, through his work with We Are Earth Cooperative, SirRoan is training young people of color to be leaders in urban agriculture. They are providing access to health, ancestral practices, and a sense of agency around food and medicinal sovereignty to students in at-risk communities, namely in East New York and Brownsville. We Are Earth is currently working tirelessly on non-cannabis or psilocybin projects. At the same time, SirRoan is laying the groundwork to provide access for people of color to operate as expert technicians and entrepreneurs in the fields of medicinal, entheogenic production and products. Your dollars and time, other resources are able to contribute to this project are required to continue to take shape. So if you feel called to, please donate to SirRoan's cause. Welcome, SirRoan.
Aho. It's a pleasure and an honor to be a part of this program and to, follow Donna and Travis sharing, heartfelt sharings. It's a tremendous amount of passion and discipline going into what's been contributed here today. And yeah, this, and that's going to continue. So, my name is SirRoan Smiley. My pronouns are he and him. I like to honor everybody's way of being. And, I wanted to start off by sharing, great gratitude for the land that that this discussion is coming, that I'm able to present my portion of the discussion from, honored and stewarded by Lenape Canarsie people, with great contributions by Taino people. And I'd like to, it would still be immaculately stewarded by them today if it weren't for the such violent deeds of imperialism and colonialism. So I just kind of want to reflect on that. I want to give a big thanks to Nicole and Donna for having us all here and having you all here to listen to this and contribute your energy and resonate this, reflect it back into your communities where you are. This is an important intersection: cannabis, consciousness, the environment. Cannabis being a filter between consciousness and the environment in this case. We're all aspects of, like the cannabis, we're beings of consciousness and the environment. We are of that, period. And this being cannabis holds a tremendous amount of power in having us align with that. And before any history was written, before any culture or industry were built around this being, cannabis, it was used to access higher states of being. It's we talk about the bang, and it's already that narrative in Hindu culture, and we often see depictions of Shiva, with the cannabis, the bang, as his favorite plant. Here's the Lord of creation, and cannabis is his favorite plant. The hashish and the regions of that world where these seeds are originate. So we get a sense of what this plant's relationship with human beings are. And I've had great privilege of discovering some of my indigenous roots on this planet, and especially on this continent. My father discovered late in his life that he's, I guess you would say an eighth plus an eighth, or how does that work? A quarter Cherokee and Blackfoot. And that came to be something that was present for me later on. And, me leaning in and getting closer to that, I recognize, to Travis' point, some of the origin stories of the tobacco were very similar, on this continent, where, the tobacco served as plant medicine, a guide, a teacher that taught us to work more closely with the other medicines of the planet. That when we, discovered the tobacco, we were able to lean in and listen to the forests in a way that were, instrumental in us, tuning ourselves to the ways of, the cattail and the willow, and in other parts of the world, the cannabis has a very similar reverence. And we kind of fast forward into getting that plant, you know, the cannabis from the imperial shuffling and commoditization, large in part to the Dutch, the British, the Portuguese warships, moving it into every colony possible. And despite that, and in combination with the other addictive or what do you call that, indulgent substances that were part of that trade, salt, sugar, opium, you name it. This was the way of building tobacco. This was the way of building economies through imperialization. Despite that, we still face a tremendous amount of moral regulation against folks, not so much against the plants, but against the people who carry the plants. So, although they were introduced by uh, the creators of the moral regulation, they were still aimed at individuals to further destabilize communities. And I think we have a great opportunity with this plant as a teacher, to kind of bring us back to the higher self, that origin story of learning to be in the world a little bit better. Maybe the cannabis is cultivating us to spread it as far and deep as possible, so that we can awaken, so that a few more of us can, shift past the paradigms that we currently are stuck in. Cannabis has an amazing way of breaking through that, whether you ask for it or not. Hence, many people intake cannabis and proclaim that they have anxiety attacks. And then when I experienced that in a healing context, because I work in that way a lot as an herbalist, I recognize that this is the work that one needs to do, right? When you have an anxiety attack because you're working with cannabis, your mind and these structures are moving really quickly, and they need to be, reevaluated, and you need to pay attention to what's coming up for you there. And I think there's a lot going on for us societally, and there's a lot of people who are claiming that they cannot work with the cannabis because it makes, for great strong energetic reactions. So I kind of want to fast forward, and over the past several decades, these bodies of research that are coming out around cannabis are pointing at the biology, the chemistry, the psychoactivity, the physiology, the economy, the politics, while the spiritual, spatial, and cultural, aspects remain silenced. And now is the time for us to sort of shape our walk with this plant, and therefore everything else, as stewards, if we can. And we have an incredible opportunity and leverage with the proven biology, chemistry, psychoactivity, physiology, and economy that are demonstrated to really prop up the latter, the spatial, cultural, and spiritual. When I say spatial, I mean like where it exists on the planet, where it's from, um, how much space is in between it, where it's legal and where it's not, right? um, Essentially it comes down to not so much the legalization and what we're going to do, but giving a damn, like caring enough, because we have all the research, we have all the resources. Like there's nothing that needs to exist on the planet in order for us to arrive at equality and inclusion. That's the thing that it remains elusive based on where we stand and what we stand for. And I think here right now we talk about cannabis, consciousness, and the environment. What we're talking about is not a loose set of correlations, but essentially what we stand for in this conversation on cannabis. And we've done everything else pretty well. So I think it's time that we stand in solidarity with the people who continue to be excluded and targeted systematically. Namely indigenous people on this continent, um, and Black people on this continent are, targeted as if it's right, as if it's correct, as if there's actually some data to support the targeting. And there's so many things that we need to talk about from on a meta level. And I'm happy to spend as much time there as possible. I'd like to meditate with you on it. If we could have a sound bath or some food to bring it into our bodies and get even closer doing it that way, I look forward to that day as well. Um, but these things can't be addressed in one session alone. I look forward to expanding on these points with you. But we need to translate this into what might be regulatory language at some point. I don't know exactly what that looks like, but I got some ideas. I've got some ideas, and I'll keep it brief. And they come down to some simple things. Like the way what we're doing impacts the air, the way we're consuming the resources of this planet to make cannabis possible, the way that we're using the water to make cannabis possible and diverting it from other living beings and ecosystems, the restorative economic impacts and possibilities, and the spiritual and cultural impacts and possibilities. Churches should be allowed to use the plant. Criminals' records should be expunged, and that's just to scratch the surface. And of course, waste and toxicity need to be held at very, very high level of accountability for all the cultivations, both outdoor and indoor, that are going to impact the water table and the wastewater management. So I'm going to put a pin in it there. And as my brother said, aho matukayasin, and I appreciate your time and attention.